My name is Tara Ayers, and I'm married to Jason Ayers over there. And together we own Slice Tomato Productions. My original background, the first couple years out of school, I worked in broadcasting and did audio production, and he was working at an ABC TV affiliate at the time, and we met and moved here, and then my career path changed. So I worked for about a decade in public accounting. I did business services, so helping people set up their business and keep their books and run their payroll and learn how to do that. Spent another 5 years or so in tax before I wanted my life back and I moved into a corporate job. But that's worked out really well, me being in a corporate job, having a 9 to 5 or 8 to 5, 8 to 6 schedule. And Jason is running the production business is a lot more flexible. So we're very yin and yang. And so everything that he knows how to do, I don't know how to do, and vice versa. I think the only thing we have in common is audio production. We know how to move the little levers and the things, and that's it. But it's been a real good experience to see what it takes to start up a business and then what it takes to keep it going and have it be profitable every time.
Chip Crane, I thought I was coming to watch a film at a bar. Apparently that's not the case, so now we're all up front. Oh well. I've been an entrepreneur since 1991. Actually, I think I could probably date that all the way back to 1987, but we'll go with 1991. I run multiple different businesses throughout that time. What I do in my days today is I actually work for IBM, if you guys recognize who that is. A very large multinational company. Yeah. And I've been doing sales, marketing, technical roles. Right now I lead a tech selling team for the North Americas, so it is a lot of fun. We do a lot with AI, so it was also something I thought might be of interest tonight, a little bit of AI. But to his point earlier, a lot of this is just how do you run the business, right? The basic foundational stuff of that. And that's where you really call your smart CPAs and such, so that's really what you want to do with that. So that's it. And I really did think we were just coming to a bar to chill out and have a conversation. So anyway.
Yeah, same here. Wrote a slide to us. So I'm Robert. I have been in the wedding industry since 17. Do wedding films and photos and run a wedding venue. So I wear almost every hat in the business and probably a little too many. Rhodes works with us as well. Put as much on him as I can. And then, but yeah, I also thought we were going to be hanging out at a bar just chit-chatting, not sitting up front. So if you have questions, I will answer them. But yeah, okay, let's keep moving.
I'm Rhodes, you guys know me. I missed a few things. Thank you, Tara. Where are you?
Right here.
Oh, hi. Opening up Dove Light to this really cool space. They're very for the community, and so if you got questions about this space, go talk to them. I'm Rhodes. So our first few slides, this is actually, when I met Robert a long time ago, we went to a group called Tuesdays Together. It was kind of a wedding group, but creatives as well, mostly photographers. But they brought Melanie Moss up. I called her to be here, but she had other stuff going on. But I asked her if I could use her slides. So I really liked her slides even from, 2019, I think, a couple years ago. But she kind of worked the system backwards of kind of figuring out where you want to be financially. So go over here. Figuring out your financial goals. She kind of has these, just pay attention to these like quick little, these quick little things here. So revenue equals profit plus business expenses. And then she goes into figuring out, breaking them all down. So what do you want your goal profit to be? What do you want your expenses, or determining your expenses, your revenue and income. So for this example, if someone wants a goal profit of $25,000 for the year, then the next thing is figuring out what your expenses will be. So there's all these different segments of figuring out what your actual expenses are. Some of those are known, some of those aren't known. If you want to send to you, I can send it. She also has a worksheet I can send to you. But all of these things. And she's even got, grocery shopping and stuff like that, because depending on what business or what you're doing, you're going to have some of those expenses. And including office space, if you use part of your house for office space. So just figuring out your costs. For example, profit 25,000 divided by the year. Cost of doing business is 5,000 a year. Okay, then we have 30% of goal profit is your taxes. Unplanned expenses. So just kind of cushioning, putting in all the padding in for all of the stuff you're gonna need to do, and then your total business expenses. And you add that 25,000 to your total business expenses, and you get your gold revenue, how much you have to make in order to pay off your expenses and still make $25,000. Sorry, you guys can see, but and then you take that, for your monthly income, divide by 12 and stuff like that. And then you can even take this even further. I don't think she has this on here. Forget that. Is taking that monthly profit that you're trying to generate and figuring out kind of what your hours are. You can divide it by months if you want to do that, or you can divide it by hours, or whatever, and really break it down to what your hourly rate is. Now everyone's pretty much heard you don't want to give out your hourly rate per se, because if you work really fast you don't get paid as much, or if you work really slow you get paid more, so you don't really give out your hourly rate. But that'll help you figure out what your pricing for each of your services could be for half-day rate or full-day rate. Or if there's something a little extra, you know what your hourly rate is that you can kind of tweak in there and stuff like that. So it just kind of helps you work backwards from a total down to an hourly and figure out how to price yourself. I just thought it was cool. If you're interested, I can share it to you. You can go through it. It's not her whole speech. She took an hour and something to go through it. So. But that's it. Cool. You want to move back over here and we'll start asking questions?
Perfect.
You said it was sliced tomatoes. Is it more narrative stuff or commercial work or like what?
The bulk of what we do is internal video for corporations, for the corporate world. We also do a lot of motion graphics that are kind of technical explanations for things for technology. We do a lot of those things because they're lucrative, so that we can do a lot more story-driven work. So we do work with nonprofits and things like that, because Jason's passion is telling stories, and he's wanted to do that since he was a kid. And so this is kind of a way that we do the other things and we do them well, so that they finance the things that we want to do.
So I guess I can lead off to the first question is, how did you guys get into the business, and what made you decide to start your own, or whatever? Yeah, how do you want to take that?
So most of you who are in the room are here because you are not wired to be somebody's employee, to clock in and clock out every day, to have somebody monitor your computer usage during the day, to have a set schedule where someone tells you what to do every minute of the day. You're not wired that way. Jason is not wired that way. He had a very compassionate boss who told him that one day. And it just kind of affirmed everything he was thinking about himself. And so he knew he needed to work for himself, and we needed to find a way to do that. And so in a moment of life-changing, I don't know if it was prayer or what, he just decided he was going to cold call video production companies in Greenville and ask them if they needed editors. And he opened the phone book, like white pages.
This was during Yellow Pages.
Like a literal book. And he found this company called Sliced Tomato Productions, and he called them and said, "Hey, my name is Jason. I'm an editor. I'm making crappy TV commercials. I don't want to do that anymore. Do you need an editor?" And they said, "No, we don't, but we'll keep your name on file." And he's like, "Okay, thanks." Well, and he thought that would be the end of the conversation. And then a couple of weeks later, the guys that owned the business at the time they all worked at Grace Church, and they're having a daddy-daughter dance, and they just needed somebody to come take photos at the daddy-daughter dance. And he was like, "Okay." And it was like maybe $50 or $100 job, something like that. And he showed up and did it, and he hit it off really well with the guys that owned the company. And then a few years later, he went to work for them full time. And those were the folks who told him he's not wired to do that. And a few years later, the time was just right where they were ready to sell that company. The guys that owned that had their hands in ministry or other companies, and it was time to let go of that business. And he was the first person that they thought of, and it was time to sell it. So we were able to buy that business at a time when the owner's focus was other places, so the revenue was not that high, so the valuation of the business was probably at an all-time low, and we got it at a discount, a nice little price, and we bought the business and that was December of 2019 when we officially bought it. And then COVID hit, the world fell apart. And it was great because he'd been working in weddings, and y'all know live events in 2020 was not great. And so this was the way that we pivoted out of live events, and we did a lot of motion graphics and outsourced the motion graphics because that's not his strength, but there we have some subcontractors that are really good at it. And those subcontractors and a PPP loan kept us going through 2020. So it was pretty cool. That's probably a longer answer than you wanted, but there you go.
So buying a business then, did you have any business savvy before that, or have you learned what you learned in your job?
Luckily, I started working in public accounting and business services and tax in 2010, 2011. And so when we got the document, the sale of the business document, I sat down with my boss, who had been a CPA for 40 years, and we went through it with a fine-tooth comb together. That first offer we got, we're like, no, that's too much money. And we actually said, no, thank you, we don't want to do that. And 6 months later, it came back at half the price, and my boss was like, buy it and take it and run, take it and run. So we did. And what was great was the official owners of the business at the time when we bought it were husband and wife CPAs. And they had systems set up in place for everything. They had pricing worksheets. They have a part-time project manager. She's a former engineer, former school teacher, the most organized person in the world. She handles all of our logistics, hires our subcontractors, and does all these things for us. So that all Jason has to do is the stuff he's good at. He's good at the actual work. He's good at talking to the people, and I do the money. And so it was just like providential lining up. It was at a time where all we had to do were the things that we were already good at.
Okay, so somebody who doesn't have that blessing and miracle,
Yes.
where do we start?
When you sell a product to someone, if you're doing a corporate job or a nonprofit job, you know that person, if they're a shrewd business person, in the back of their head, they're thinking, I could do this with an iPhone. And your job is to convince them, no, you cannot do it with an iPhone. You need to have people who do what they do best. So when you're looking at finances, do not go it alone. You need to have a tax professional, and not just somebody that prepares your tax returns. Somebody you sit down with and say, this is what I'm doing. This is what my revenue looks like. These are what my goals are. What do I need to do to get there? What type of record keeping do I need to have? Do I need employees? All these things. Have a professional talk through it with you. I don't work in public accounting anymore, and because I don't have I have to have yearly education to keep my CPA license, and so my continuing education, I tailor that to my job now. So I'm not studying tax every day. I'm not going to tax classes at the end of every year. So I don't do our tax return anymore. I leave that up to an expert, and it saves you a lot of time and headache. And the best thing about that is if something goes wrong with the IRS, you're not the one on the phone with the IRS. The person that signed your tax return is on the phone with the IRS and taking care of that for you. And they can represent you in front of the IRS and answer all the questions and submit all the documentation that needs to be done, and you don't have to worry about that because you have a person for that. I would also recommend some of the things that were on the slides. There is a book called Profit First. It's by a guy named Mike Michalowicz. It's a hard to spell Polish name, but the book is called Profit First. And what he does is he helps you lay out your cash flow. And there are accountants in Greenville that are well versed in that book and that cash flow method, and they would be a really good place to start.
Other comments on that is where do you?
How you got into it?
Oh, how I got into it. I got into serial entrepreneurship because when I was in college, and this is going to be so foreign to the rest of you, people didn't own computers at that time. They really didn't, not at home anyway, right? So I was in college for computer science and, pardon?
They were poor?
No, they didn't exist. But, and yes, they were poor, I guess. But, so I was in for comp sci, so computer programming, and I was running for Cognate as a minor. in business. And we figured out that you could buy the components of a computer, you could build those and sell those and actually make an incredibly good profit back in the day. Again, a long time ago now, right? So that's how I got started was, hey, this is so simple. And I was in college, I was a senior in college when we actually started the business. And at that point in time, you realize that all the stuff that the college was trying to tell you was to figure out enough money to live. And then I was like, well, if I sold 3 computers, I would make enough to live, right? And then I just started doing the math to do that. But to her point, the way I became good at what I do is by being very bad at what I did at first, right? And I learned a lot of really bad lessons. And one of those was we try to do everything ourselves, including our finances and such. So, on about business number 3, we started to figure it out, right? So, yeah. Robert?
How I got into it. So it was a little different. I didn't really, so I'll just short story. My first daughter was born, and she was born 3 months early and went into the NICU for 3 months. And I had a desk job, and I hated myself for being at that desk job all day long and not being able to spend time like in the NICU with my kid. So I was doing weddings like 2 or 3 on the side here and there. And I was like, okay, this is it. I'm gonna I only need to do 10 a year to make the same amount of money I'm making now. So I wasn't making very much there. So anyway, I decided, okay, well, we're just going to push this and going full time. And then on my kid's 1-year birthday, I invited all my coworkers to the birthday party. We rented out the coffee shop downtown Simpsonville, and then I told them I quit. So, yeah, it was great. Yeah, and now we're 3 kids in, and everything's expensive, and yeah, weddings is now we've pivoted to wedding venue management because there seems to be a cap on what people will pay in the Greenville area for wedding films and photos. So trying to get to the step before they even get to films and photos. So
But they still have money.
yeah, when they still have money, yeah, before they've blown it all.
Well said.
So, 2 things I want to get to. I guess you guys can confer with me on this. As marketing is the troublesome one, finances and taxes and all that stuff is troublesome one. Anybody else have anything else they really want?
Networking,
Networking. Okay.
just the ins and outs of networking.
Yeah.
How to communicate and talk to
Yeah.
other businesses and stuff like that. Okay. Any other questions?
Advertising versus marketing. I mean, I know my 20 years in the business has been mostly relational. So unlike the work I did before, develops into the next thing, but that has a cap on how many hours an individual can work. So
Yeah.
I'm curious to see what you guys do differently.
What were you saying?
It's like ego, like keeping that green energy, like I feel like entrepreneurs.
Keeping our ego?
Yeah, no, don't keep green. Like, how do you combat
I'm
that?
suffocating in your ego right now.
That's what, Leo. How do you combat that? Like, you get profit.
Having to work with ego?
Like just working, fighting it.
Yeah.
I mean, like when you start to make profit and you start to, I have money now.
Oh, yeah,
Kind of this
I
ego
gotcha.
mindset, like I'm doing it all right. You can lose that green mindset of like I need to hustle or, fight.
It's a funny one because I feel like a lot of us deal with imposter syndrome as well. Like
That's
I'm
true.
always, on the flip side, it's like, oh, I'm doing so good. Everyone's looking at me. Oh, I don't know if I should be in this business.
But yes.
Month to month.
If there's anything that's serious insecurities, it's film bar.
Yeah.
First, when you're struggling, you're like, I'm an imposter, but I need to keep going.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I was just gonna say like the importance of, I guess like having a business plan and like all that goes into that.
Okay. Yeah, actually, let's start there. Working, like building yourself up, starting a business plan, figuring out your goals, and where you want to fall into the market. Like, you guys, however you want to take that question.
I'll start. I write 2 business plans when I'm going to do it. I'll be honest with you. You write one that's more geared toward the bank, and this is just my formula, right? So you do it how you want to do it. I write one that's for the bank, and that's the proper one that you go and download a template, and we fill in that template. And then I write another one that's just for me, and I do everything I can to make it as simple as possible. Yes, I follow the formula, the whys. Why am I doing it? And not why for me, Why do you care? As a customer, what is the value of this product, right? Or the service that I'm providing, right? Then I'm going, okay, who is that actual customer that I'm trying to reach? And then what am I actually going to do to be able to deliver something for them? You can slash that as a how to that, right? And then you're going to say, okay, what's going to be the results of those pieces? A, for my customer, and then for me. I try to stay very, very focused in my business plan on what's the value I'm providing to them, because my philosophy is if I can provide a value to you, you will absolutely come back and pay me what I ask you to pay me next time, right? And you're talking about advertising versus marketing versus maybe sales. We can go through a little exercise a little bit later on. If you're interested, let me know. We'll talk about, I've got a house for sale, and I can guarantee that you'll be willing to buy it in a little bit, right? We can talk about that a little bit later. But that's my philosophy is how to build that business plan. And the reason I make the one for me is because that's the one that's driving me. That's the one that's gotten me interested. So with the why, I'm allowed to include my passion, but yet I've broken it down into the how so that now I can explain it. I'm sure you've all heard it, but I want to be able to explain my business plan to a 5th grade, and I want them to be able to understand it. And if I can do that, then I feel like I've got a pretty good business plan ready, right? Now, the one that goes to the bank, frankly, I would carry it to Tara here and say, hey, Tara, help me with this, right? Because it's got to, I mean, you got to have ROI in it, right? And if you're not thinking ROI when you're selling and when you're advertising, you need to change that, because that's how this world works, whether you want to believe it or not, right? And I'm not a creative, so I should have started with that. So you've got, I'm in the enemy camp on the other side, but you've got to think about ROI. That is, you want to know how to connect with a business person? Don't explain to me how great your commercial is going to be, or how cool it's going to be, or how you feel about it, or how I'm going to feel about it. You got to tell me what money I'm going to make. What's it going to drive back for the business? Sorry, that was a long one.
No, that was great.
Oh, good. Okay, good.
Actually, can I ask a question about your ROI calculation for video? Because it's a creative project and there's a lot of unknowns in that, and there's a lot of factors that go beyond when we hand off video to a client.
Sure.
It will determine the ROI. I mean,
Sure.
I can create the best video in the world with the perfect sales pitch.
Yeah.
And if it's sitting on their server and never going out to client,
Yeah,
then the ROI is 0.
that's right.
So how do you communicate an ROI to a customer when there's a lot of unknown factors in there?
So how do you calculate ROI today? Tell me, how do you guys calculate ROI today? Let's digress. Does anybody use ROI to sell and market today? Interesting.
It's hard for us because we're trying to sell a video and you can't prove the.
I disagree. I'm sorry, I'm going to blatantly disagree with you. Yeah, that's, I don't know about telling you, but I'll tell you my mentality, right, is that everything you do is to get me to my one goal as a business owner. What's my one goal as a business owner?
Profit.
I need revenue, right? You can't control my profit, but you can control my revenue to some degree. And we're going to have to step out on a little bit of a leaning in on this, right? So you can't get to an exact number ever. But you got to help me with revenue. So whatever video you're going to produce, you got to talk to me about what that revenue is. Now, I can't hold, as a business owner, I can't hold you accountable for that necessarily if I don't do what you tell me to do. But if you make a video and you can tell me that, hey, this video has, it's 13 minutes long, and we need to get this to X number of people, and we believe that this is going to generate some form of revenue, then you ought to be able to make that happen. And we can talk about how to do that, right? So you take their target market, right? So somebody pick an industry, quick.
Healthcare.
Healthcare, okay. So you're going to do a healthcare video. So what do they care about? They care about patients coming in, right? So you got to think through for them. You got to help them and be their own marketing department. Where are you going to air this video?
Nursing homes.
Okay, so you're going to air at nursing homes for healthcare, right? All right, so how many nursing homes are there, right? So start to do the math. And the first thing I try to tell everybody to do is go capture all the random stats you can get off of Google as fast as you can. Don't put too much thought into it. Just go get them. There are 74 nursing homes in this 50-mile geography, right? So, okay, 74. How many beds are in those those nursing homes? Start factoring that out. Let's say you could get 10% of that. What would that equate to in revenue, right? In 4 minutes, we just kind of came up with a quick plan on how to calculate revenue for a healthcare thing. Now, I wouldn't want to spend another 30, 45 minutes on that. Like, let's try to get some harder stats. But again, remember, I'm not trying to say be disingenuous, but you're putting forth the idea. And you would work with them. At that point in time, once you said, hey, this is what I just came up with in 30 minutes, how do you calculate your ROI? Let them tell you how they calculate the ROI, and now you take and use those numbers for them. My humble opinion.
And I think, if I can add in, a lot of our clients, like Tara was saying, it's internal videos. It's a lot harder to kind of pitch, you're gonna make money from this, because they're not. It's an internal video for their business. And so rather than focusing on the ROI financially, we focus on the ROI of time. We've got a lot of businesses that want to do their own thing and think they can make their own videos, and they're not that great, and they're not good at it, and so we pitch it as, hey, this is one less thing you have to do. You're good at this, spend your time on this. We'll come in and take over the video part, because that's not what you're trying to do. You don't need to be spending time focusing on that. So it's about the time that we can save them.
And interestingly enough, so I outsource our training videos, right? So in outsourcing the training videos we do, I do that because, quite frankly, I want my teams to be able to pass whatever accreditation test I need them to pass later that's going to be out of that video. I want that to be your responsibility, not mine, right? I'm not a creative, and I know I'm not a creative. Let me go get a creative that's going to make an interesting video versus Chip up here telling you exactly what you need to do to, you know what I mean? So let me get them to bring in, motion graphics, all kind of cool stuff, to really be able to attract my team, keep them doing something other than read an email while the video is playing in the background, right?
So essentially what you need to do is find out their objectives and then figure out what the minimum level of success is.
Yes, but if you want to start with minimum, I like it. But if you're going to do a minimum, then do a mid and then do a high, right? Sometimes you got to help them see a vision, right?
So it'd be like if we converted 10% of these patients that need hospice care now,
Yeah.
to people on hospice care by waiting. We would then do 20%, and we'd do like 30%.
Yeah, well, exactly right. Say, look, and again, you got to start with, I believe, if we ran this, we would get 10%. Now, you know what? If you want to go to 75 miles, then let's talk about that, right? Now you could get to 15% or 20% or whatever that number would be.
I think
right?
we just started a new business.
Yeah, I feel like a captive audience that you only have to wait for to convert to customers is probably the way to go.
Well, yeah.
And my day job is in home health and hospice, so yeah, I'm with you. We're good.
I should have let you answer that question.
No, that's a good answer.
I have a client that deals in that too. So.
Well, I mean, let's be honest. You have some that I don't think entrepreneurs are truly this way, but you have a lot of people that don't think in how to run their own business, right? Especially when you're working with the corporate world. I work for a very, very large organization. We have 300,000 employees, right? There's a whole lot of people there that aren't entrepreneur spirits. So when you attack them, you can talk to them ROI and they don't really know what they're talking about. So that's why you got to find somebody who cares about the ROI if you're as best you can. If you're not working with someone about ROI, then what's their ROI? I don't want to have to spend the weekend building a video, so why don't I, if you just outsource it to me, you can go home on the weekend and not have to shoot this video.
So a lot of times when we talk to marketing departments or communications departments or something like that, so a lot of the ROI would probably be more along the lines of reputation management or potentially not necessarily converting people, but just general awareness.
Yeah. A lot of it's branding, and also right now, in a lot of industries, including healthcare and a couple of others, the focus is less on top line revenue and more on retention in the labor market. And so there's a lot going on right now with internal marketing and branding in that way, like actually company culture more than customer service. Because if they can hire the right people and keep the right people, customer service and quality and branding takes care of itself. So they're focused inward on that culture and that labor market.
And selling culture, culture eats strategy for breakfast. You can have a fantastic strategy and a horrible culture and you're never going to succeed. You can have a lackluster strategy, a stellar culture, and you're still going to be able to win.
Are you got anything to add to it?
Well, I the ROI part, there's a book that I was gonna look up on my phone, but pretty much the idea is to create the person who's coming to you, to create them as the hero. So there's
Story
this
brand.
idea.
Story brand?
Yeah, story brand.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I couldn't think of the name, but to create them as the hero. So there's a problem that they have. There's a solution that you have. You're going to turn them into the hero by creating them as the people who bring the solution to the company. Does that make sense?
You've
Or
identified their pain point. And
Exactly.
then you bring the solution to the table.
Yeah.
And so the same thing, like ROI might not be physical cash, but it might be like this person who was hired to get this job done is now going to get that job done through you, and they're going to look better in their company.
Yeah.
So like you can pitch it to them all kind of ways, like that.
Yeah,
so.
and you can help them take that same concept through all the way. So not only is the person that hired you the hero, now they're going to be focused on their customer, how to make them feel like a hero, and that mindset is really collaborative, and it's really neat.
I want to move that along to communication, and you also mentioned networking, but communication with the other company and the businesses, how to speak businessese, and also getting out there, cold calls, cold emails, or in person, like some of these networking events that you can go to and meet up with people, or even, what's the wedding show?
Oh yeah, the wedding festivals that we
Wedding
do.
festivals. That you can go out and present yourself to people, so.
Robert, you're up.
Yep.
Okay, so yes, we do wedding festivals, we do open houses, we do, as far as cold calls, I've never done cold calls outside of real estate. I used to work in real estate for a while. That was awful. Let's see, so as far as getting out there though, I think probably the best thing that we do as a video company is just present our videos. I know it sounds really simple, but trying to get our best work out to the most eyes through things like wedding festivals and through things like open houses. We try to do as many open houses as we can. We try to go to other people's open houses. And I'm talking about at their venues. So venues will put on open houses where they invite photographers, videographers, caterers, all these people. So that's, what we do in our wedding industry. We also take out Google Ads, of course, and we try to work on our SEO as much as we can. But all that stuff takes money. So if you have no money but you do have good videos, that's probably the best thing to do is come here with your stuff and show friends and be like, hey guys, I'm actually decent at what I do. Can you tell your friend about me? Things like that. So if you have no money, which a lot of us don't.
Not to mention, Film Bar is free.
Yes, there you go.
Well, you got to tip.
Well, one of the things that sustained us when we were still trying to figure out what we were doing, I say we, it was him, he was figuring out what he was doing, is just viewing this industry in this town not as a competitive environment, because I don't feel like y'all aren't cutthroat. Y'all will hire each other as subcontractors. And so what's great about that is once you've been a subcontractor, that makes you treat your subcontractors really well. We tried to pay ours within 2 business days of getting an invoice. But it also means that when you want to pitch an idea, you have a vision for it, and you already know who you want to call to help you. And so the more that you can call each other and help each other, and every once in a while do each other some favors, I feel like everybody gets really honed in on what they're good at and figures out the best angle and the best path forward for what they want to do, whether it's their actual passion projects, monetizing those things, or just paying the bills while they're working on something that they want to do that doesn't pay money yet.
I'll tie into that. We had a business to where there was only 4 of those in the upstate. And as soon as we took it over, we literally called the other 2 and said, look, we want to work with you. Day in and day out, how can we help? Let's work together. They just would have nothing to do with us, right? It took us 2 years maybe, 2 years of constantly, we would literally take our entire customer base and take them to their place and spend our money there and then come back, right? We did that multiple times. It wasn't really just to try to prove. Part of it was we were trying to offer value to our customers, right? But we exposed them to other things. Finally, after about 2 years, we started working together. Every single one of our revenue started drifting up, right? Now, I'm not going to tell you that it was hockey stick or skyrocketing, but every one of us started growing up because we no longer were competing against each other, completely at least. We were now trading off stuff. And we would get a call, hey, you know what? I'm doing a big thing this weekend. Anyway, I can borrow some material. Sure, man, bring the trailer. We'll take care of you. Get it up here, right? And so we learned how to ask for help. So you've already said it, but I would say my networking trick is ask other people for help. You'd be amazed to know how cool that is, right? And the other thing is if you're gonna offer help, it's gonna take some iterations for them to accept that. Do it for free, and make sure you don't ask for anything in return. If you've decided to do this pro bono, then let it be pro bono. Don't ask for anything. Don't take the case of beer for helping to move today. If you really wanted to volunteer your time, volunteer your time. Play the longer game, if you will, that look, I'm just here to help, man, right? And then 6 months later, when I call and ask for help, you owe me, right? Let's just do it that way. Now, if you want to talk about communication, I run a sales team. What I've learned, and I deal with very high-end corporate accounts, so it may be different for me. I don't write an email that's more than 3 or 4 lines long. I get 1,000 emails a day. They're 6-page. I got to be honest. I'm never going to read that, right? It's just nobody's got the time or the patience for that. So my emails are super simple. Hey, I'm planning on being in San Diego this week. Any chance you and I could grab coffee, right? Why are you coming to San Diego, right? Well, I'll tell them that, and we start trading 3 and 4 line emails very quickly. That I found personally works much better for me than, hey, we found that this, and you give some long laundry list of why we got to work together, right? I use LinkedIn. I know LinkedIn's not necessarily the creative's platform, but it just tells you how stoic I am. But I use LinkedIn, and we do leverage LinkedIn a lot because a warm introduction is always better. So if I want to do something, then I want to go to Robert that can introduce me to this guy over here that would be helpful for me, right? So, and references are key. I mean, I know you guys already know that, but references are key. So if I did really good work for him, I'm going to ask you. That's something else. Don't be ashamed to ask for a reference. That's the silliest thing I've ever seen is, well, they may not. No, look, in fact, I would even write that into a contract if you wanted to, right? I'm willing to do it for this price. And you know what? I'll take this off if you're willing to be a public reference for me, and I can put your logo on my website. I can post this on social media, et cetera, et cetera. Put that into that. Frankly, maybe not even reduce the price, right? Give them a higher price and then come back to your normal price with that offer back into it, right?
The other part of that was the communication piece. I feel like in my time of doing it, I've learned that I speak on a certain income level, and clients will speak on this income level. So there's that. Plus also speaking businessese, because they don't care about the creative side as much as I do. So they're gonna really want to know the story of their money.
Yeah.
If they're investing into a film project, or what do you guys have to say about just like learning their lingo and trying to speak on their terms?
I feel like the best 3-word question you can ask is, what's your budget?
Mm-hmm.
Because then you can scale what you're going to do to something that they already said they could say yes to and come in right under it. And if they say, oh, marketing said or CFO said budget shrinks, you go, okay, well, let's scale it back. Or if you don't get the chance to talk about money at all and you lay something out, they go, oh, that's too much. You go, okay, well, what's your budget? Let's scale it back. That way it's collaborative and you're working for a solution together, and it's really hard for them to say no when you're giving them everything they already asked for.
Of course, that client, or the potential client, would have to be somewhat educated what something like that might cost. There's a lot of people out there running around thinking, whoa, we get somebody to come in with a camera, shoot a little video. That should be fun. For anybody to come in and shoot a video for me, that should be fun for you. So don't you be charging me a lot of money. How about a couple $100, will that work? Of course it won't work. We have to turn around and educate that person and what it takes as far as not just coming, showing up with the camera, but with the crew and the investment that we have in our gear, the investment we have in our knowledge that we spent 20 plus years learning the trade. You pay me for what I know and not what I do. And for us to educate that person is another job that goes untold. Just like when, say, Jason hands over a video, so here's your video we produced for you. Now go have fun with it. I mean, I might be wrong, but I will give my client a video that says, I can only give you and provide you the content I just created for you, but you have to find somebody who can do the marketing for you unless you already have one in-house who can do that for you. But then again, for the creative who sits at home with a camera in their lap thinking, I'm going to go out and do corporate videos, where do I start? Well, you can sell the idea of, hey, I'm going to create this thing for you that's going to really help you make more money. But then I gotta figure out, well, how do we get that video out there? It can't just be sitting on one shelf.
Sure.
Because if it does that, just like with our narrative, our movies, we spend a lot of time and effort shooting our little films, and then what happens? It sits on the shelf. Where do we go with it? How do we get it out there? And we were talking about LinkedIn, there's Facebook, there's Instagram, there's all YouTube. Those are platforms, I think, that are very valuable, in most cases free, that allows us to use that for our exposure, for our, hey, you know, show your friend, let's get your friend to come look at this thing, we're good, look at us, you know. And if you're not, you're gonna get there eventually, but I think it starts there. And then, of course, if you're lucky enough to work with a team who has the knowledge of marketing, then you can, you know, pull them all together and it says, okay, you help us with getting this out, maybe web building and things like that, marketing. That's just a whole different, you know, industry.
Yeah,
And I will say, I say that on every sales call, what's your budget? And I will continue to say that on every sales call. 95% of the time they say, I don't know. So it's not like I wouldn't expect to get an answer. You're still really not gonna, but at least on the 5% of the time that people do answer, it's super helpful, like Tara said.
Yeah, because you may be thinking this is a $5,000 project, and they're like, I only have 30,000. You're like, oh, okay. I think I can do it for that. But you never know. And sometimes the person that makes that initial contact with you isn't a decision maker; they're just gathering information. And so we try not to ever give a price on the phone on that initial conversation. We're going to set up a meeting with the project manager. We're going to say, we could do anything for you. What's your dream? What does it need to look like? Paint the picture, and we'll walk through it and kind of help create that with them. And then once they have this emotional investment in what they've described for us, it's a lot easier to talk money.
You know, when you're talking about the budget, what's your budget? They could come back with a low ball, but at least at that point, you know what they've said, and you can say to your mind, well, no, it's gonna be, and then the education part, the going back and forth, the negotiation, then it becomes, well, here's what you really want.
Yeah.
Now it becomes this. And that's kind of where they wanted it to begin with.
And it's nice because sometimes what they want isn't anything that you are even capable or want to do. And you can say, you know what, that's not really what we do, but let me tell you who does that. And so being well connected is helpful for everybody. Because Jason once got a call, the first wedding he ever got was a call from a stranger who knew someone who had recommended Jason's work. And he answered the phone and she's like, hi, Jason, my name is so-and-so. Do you like money? I would like to give you some money. I have a project for you. And that's how we got into the wedding industry. It was something snafu where somebody had to fire somebody at the last minute that needed a replacement. And he was like, I'm free tomorrow. What he didn't say was, I just got laid off. Okay. And I mean, it was one of those things where right place, right time. Don't be shy.
And I think some of that education process and some of this back and forth, as far as me, I can automate a lot of that stuff as much as I can. So like follow up, automated. Helpful tips about your upcoming wedding film, automated. Things like that. I don't know if it works exactly for you guys like that because, you know, you're talking to someone who's talking to someone else.
To do that.
But what do you say?
You use HoneyBook?
I do. I use HoneyBook. I love and hate HoneyBook at the same time. So, yeah, you guys use that a little bit too. Yeah, yeah. I have a very love-hate relationship with it.
I'm waiting for the day where that automated email, congratulations, you're married, and they actually killed the wedding.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, Rhodes sees it sometimes, and he's like, "Can you please take me off of this?" But as far as like they inquire 3 days later, automated, like, hey guys, you know, following up. And my communication with a bride is much different than probably your communication with someone trying to, you know, buy a $100,000 video. But mine's more like peppy and upbeat and like, hey, can't wait for your big day. Just want to remind you, blah, blah, blah. You know, really like 20s, like I'm talking to a 20-year-old girl. And then as much as, like I said, just as much as you can automate, and that saves a lot of headache. And maybe even a whole person that you have to hire. So, you know.
Virtual assistants are
great. Yeah. So I'll go back to the what's your budget. Developing your questions before you ever get to them is a key feature. So you're gonna ask, what's your budget? It's a great question to start with. I would also ask, what do you expect for that, right? So you've told me your budget is $800 or $8,000 or $800,000. What do you expect for that? Because maybe they do have a budget of $30,000. However, maybe they expected you to carry that out by hand. Of course, you don't really want to do that, right? So I would do that, and I would learn to ask questions as much as you possibly can. The more you do that, the more you're going to learn instantly, and frankly, the more you make them the owner of the problem, and now you're the helpful solution person, right? So I'll often ask, hey, do you have budget? We ask, what's the process for the purchase, right? So if you're willing to purchase, what are you going to, who do I really need to get to is what I'm secretly trying to figure out, and how long is it going to take you to get there? So you have budget, AKA, what's the process, has it approved? And then it's going to, what do you expect for that, right? And then how would you guys think that would happen, right? Talk me through how you think this video would get out. Okay, you want hospice videos to go out? Who do you think would be your target market, right? Oh, well, I'm just the person collecting data. All fantastic, no problem. Let me help you serve your, whoever you're the administrator to. Talk to me more about what they're asking you. And frankly, I will pump them for information as much as I can possibly get it, because I'm your best friend. I'm here to help you, right? And then I go out and try to add value and collect that information back, make the admin a hero, and of course,
Well, the more you know, the better off you are in negotiating.
100%.
So moving on, you had questions about advertising versus marketing?
I think that's been somewhat addressed, but yeah, I mean, it depends on the niche that you're working in. Are you a pull-based business? Are you a push business? Are you a business-to-business kind of relationship? Those all require different strategies of how you get access to who you're targeting to sell your product to.
Yeah.
So.
And in my mind, advertising is more, kind of very traditional advertising, right? In my head, I always see that print piece of paper that comes in the mail, right, that we don't necessarily use. I know that's not really what it is. But I always ask in our industries that we're going to be business owners in is okay, what do I think would work? And then I would stop and I'd say, I'm probably wrong. So what is all my competition doing? And then I just ask, are they right? Do they know what they're doing? Or is this really, none of us really have this solved yet, right? And then try to be creative. And you leverage every single free thing you can possibly leverage. It's time consuming, it's exhausting, but it's worth it. Honeybook or whatever else you can get, use it.
And something I was having a conversation with a client that I know socially, and she wanted to hire us for a project, but she didn't think it was in the budget. I'm like, well, what's the project for? She's like, it's a presentation for the company Christmas party. I said, well, how much is your budget for the Christmas party? She's like, we're trying to shrink it back. We're trying to be lean and mean for the rest of the year, things like that. We're looking for budget cuts, not ways to spend more money. I said, well, when we film this, let's just film it evergreen. She's like, what do you mean? I said, we are going to film content that you can use throughout the year on socials, on any kind of digital advertising, on TV commercials, all of that. Whatever we film for the Christmas party, don't have Christmas trees in the background. Nobody wears a Santa hat. Everything we're doing is about company culture. And so let's find more ways to film this and then find more ways to use it that don't cost you another shoot day.
Yeah, we often add social shorts or testimonies or reviews and stuff onto interviews we're already doing and shooting stuff. So we'll just capture everything we can. It's already there, we're already set up. Might as well double up and get all those things in there. I want to get into, unless you guys have more about advertising, the taxes part of it. So some of the finances, what are some tools to use and what are some of the things we need to be aware of and keep track of?
So it's really easy to fall into two traps. One trap is have a really good month and adjust your lifestyle, thinking you're always going to have a good month after month after month, because
I just got to say amen to that.
Yeah.
It's 100% right.
You had a good month. You didn't become an overnight success. And
That's
so...
right.
Even in large businesses?
Yes.
No, 100%.
We run into that a lot with realtors. We kind of laugh at them sometimes. We're like, they're feast or famine. They're driving a Land Rover, but they don't have anything to eat for dinner tonight, kind of thing. The other trap is to confuse the business's revenue with your personal income. They're not the same thing. Your business should run itself, should pay for its own expenses, including the taxes on the earnings. So that book, Profit First, one of the things it does is it says, okay, In this day and age, how do you know how much money you have? You check your online balances. And so you're going to spend whatever's in that bank account because you think it's there. This is how much money I have. So go ahead and set up separate accounts so that anytime revenue comes in, it goes into a holding account. Twice a month or once every 2 weeks or however often you want to pay yourself. On payday, you allocate the money that's in your income account. First, whatever project costs you've budgeted for, those go into an account that's just for project costs to pay your subcontractors because you want to pay them on time, you want them to keep them happy. Then, what's left is your money for your gross profit. So you want to set aside a percentage of that right then and there that's going to be profit, money that you don't spend, so you ensure you make a profit. Do you have money to go into an operating account to pay for everyday expenses? Do you have money that's set aside? You have money that's set aside for taxes, and then you have money that's set aside for your paycheck. So, what the percentage we have used historically for the last few years that served us well is 15% of your gross profit is what we set aside for taxes. So, gross profit is all of the revenue minus the cost directly related to that project. The 15% is a magic number in taxes, and it's just easy to remember. When you are self-employed, 15.3% of your net income from your business is FICA. So when you're somebody's employee, when you work for someone else, 7.65% of your taxable wages goes to pay for FICA, and FICA is Social Security and Medicare. Then your employer, as a cost of being an employer and cost of employing you, they match that money. So you have 7.65% out of your paycheck, 7.65% out of your employer's bank account goes together, and that goes to the IRS for your FICA, your Medicare and Social Security. When you're self-employed, you're responsible for both sides of that. 15.3% of your self-employment income goes to FICA, so that one day you can retire and get along with whatever you saved up, you get your Social Security check, you get Medicare, just like everybody else who worked for the man their whole career. And what that really bites people in the butt, because they're focused on keeping the business running or pumping cash into it, or their main focus, maybe they're doing the Dave Ramsey program at church and they're like, pay off debt, pay off debt, pay off debt, pay off debt. And they take every extra penny and they pay off debt, and then they get a $15,000 tax bill and they don't know what to do. So if you're setting aside money at the beginning, as soon as you get it, you don't spend it, you set it aside for taxes, have a tax professional walk you through the process, you pay estimated taxes 4 times a year to turn in all of that money as you go, because that's not your money, that's the government's money. If you keep it, you're stealing from the government, okay? So that money that comes in, part of that, just like when you're an employee and you have withholding, you never see that money. Think the same way. You are the employer paying the payroll tax, essentially. Your employer does not spend that money on utilities and marketing. They send that money straight to the government to stay compliant. You need to do the same thing. That Profit First book walks through that. Sometimes you get to the end of the year and your expenses, your operating expenses will fluctuate. Sometimes you get to the end of the year, you'll owe a little extra. And that's okay, because you have money set aside in your tax account to pay that bill. What happened to us this year was Sliced Tomato had a year where things were kind of different. They had never looked quite like that before. And I procrastinated. We did our business tax return back in March when it was due. It was fine. And then we did our taxes last week, filed an extension, did them last week, and we had overpaid by $19,000. Okay, that's awesome. So now we have part of that we're going to apply toward this year, but we have 10 grand that we didn't know was coming. And it's like you get a bonus every once in a while, just like anybody else gets a tax refund. You think when you're self-employed, you never get a refund, and you're kind of annoyed with all your friends who work W-2 jobs and they get a refund and they pay for a vacation with it or their furniture or whatever, or go blow it, and you're like, no, I pay in every quarter. Every once in a while, it really pays off to be wrong. And it's just little extra surprises, like found money, if you've done it right.
That applies for 1099s as well, right? You still pay your own FICA at 1099s?
Oh, yeah. Anything that comes in on a 1099, unless
You're
you
still
have,
responsible for it.
you're responsible. That is self-employment income. If you materially participate in that business, that's self-employment income, whether that was issued to you directly or you have a sole proprietorship, a single member LLC set up, or whether you have a partnership, you personally are responsible for the tax on that income. Those are called pass-through disregarded entities. You as an individual taxpayer owe that money. So your business should take care of that for you.
And as you grow and you hire employees, you also have to factor in that you remember that 7.6 she was talking about? That's per employee. So we have what we call a burden rate, which is I hire you, let's say I agree to pay you, $1 million a year. I don't get to get by with just writing you a check for $1 million. I actually got to write you a check for $1 million, and the government, what's 7.6?
FICA 7.65%.
Yeah, times 1 million.
The average person pays that plus unemployment tax to IRS and the state. Plus in South Carolina, if you have more than 3 employees, you are required to have workers' comp insurance.
Yep.
Plus.
Yes. And if your business owns assets, you need insurance for those assets. So you need property and casualty insurance on top of that.
I know we're selling you on owning your own business right now. I know we are.
Yeah.
It is a wonderful thing, but all of these are factors of why you really should seek professional help. Now, when you're just starting out, I get it. That's painful to be able to do. Yeah. It's a little pun intended there.
Why do you think there's beer here?
Yeah, exactly right. One of the things I think we glossed over early on, because you gave such a professional answer on that, great job, Tara, is you have to track everything. So find you what I call an aggregator, Mint, or what's some of the other ones, Mint, Intuit, which I think is the same thing. But anyway, one of those that taps your bank account and make sure it has access to see whatever the business account is doing. The very first step is tracking every expense you have. I can't tell you how many people I've helped and mentored before, and they're like, I don't understand, the money just seems to be disappearing, right? And I'm like, it's not disappearing, my friend, it's going somewhere. And then we find out, well, we're not tracking the petty cash account. Well, that can be $600 and $700 a month at certain businesses. I mean, it could be thousands of
Personal
dollars.
question towards that.
Yeah.
I have a separate personal checking account and a separate personal credit card.
Yep.
Should those be business accounts and business credit cards?
You should have at least one business account. You should have more because you need just an account that's just for taxes, so you don't accidentally spend your tax money. You need an account that's just for your subcontractors, so you don't accidentally spend their money. It's not your money. One other thing, real quick, and I know this is hard to sell, might be harder to swallow. When we sign a contract with a client, we do not do any work until they have paid us 50% at least, because otherwise you run the risk of working for free, and it's really hard to be in the position with subcontractors, and they've delivered everything they're supposed to deliver, and you're like, sorry, I can't pay you till the client pays me. You look like a not savvy business owner, and they're not going to want to continue to work with you. There are some bigger clients, like if it's a public utility or a hospital system or something like that, they're like, no, we pay 120 days net, blah, 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 you have to sign up for this. That's fine, but for the average client, you need money up front before you do any work, before a script gets approved, before you show up to shoot, before you do anything. You need money in your hand to pay your subcontractors.
And any business that isn't willing to pay you some form of a deposit, I'm not sure you want to work with them anyway, right? I mean, that's just, because it puts you at risk all the time. They may be very willing to pay you normally, but all of a sudden now they have a cash flow problem. Well, that's their problem. That shouldn't be my problem. But if I've put myself at risk, it's now my problem. Don't own their risk for them.
Yeah, also if you're doing subcontracting work for an agency, their client sees you at the shoot, and they associate you with that bad relationship they have with that agency. And so you don't want to hitch your wagon to somebody who's not solvent and doesn't make good decisions.
And if they're doing you wrong, they're probably doing other people wrong.
If you are at 1099, should you send an invoice for absolutely everything?
Absolutely everything.
Also, if you're 1099, are you an employee?
You are self-employed. You're an independent contractor. And I hear the phrase contract employee, and it makes my internal organs turn inside out. There's no such thing as a contract employee. You are either an independent contractor or you are an employee. You cannot be both. It's not determined by what's in the contract. It's determined by facts and circumstances. And we had, when I worked in public accounting, we had a large client. It was a gym that had multiple locations, and they had personal trainers there that they said were independent contractors, and they just paid them a flat fee. And the IRS looked at the facts and circumstances and said, no, those are employees, and you owe them time and a half for overtime. You owe them, you have to go back and pay your half of the FICA for everything and unemployment tax for everything. And then you owe penalties to the Department of Labor. You owe penalties to the IRS. You owe penalties to South Carolina for Department of Revenue, all that. Do not mess around. Make it really clear how you're being paid and how you're paying people and what the terms are. And if you have questions, ask a tax professional, because it gets real ugly real fast. And it's not a good look to get that wrong.
Well, we could end this whole thing on a really happy note.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and then
We have one.
Give up now and
that
go
was
to the
changed in
woods.
our state for film, by the way, last year. So, I was working with a production company here a lot, and they got audited by the Federal Bureau of Employment, who didn't slap on the hand because it's a new rule, but basically said, okay, when he's a subcontractor on site and you put, your camera in his hands, all that kind of thing, like there's a difference. If you show up as a DP, you're your contractor. But I was editing heavy hours in their suite on their computer under their supervision. And as soon as I came under their supervision, I was no longer offering services. So like it's changed for our world, even just last year. So there's a lot of us in here that you might be an employee and you're getting gypped. And they were kind enough to tell me, hey, we love you. We're so sorry, you're an employee now. And they didn't change the pay rate. So it's 7.65 that I get paid.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and I don't want anybody to underestimate either. Like all this sounds super daunting up front, but at this point in our business, it's just a process. Like we don't worry about any of this stuff because everything has been processed out. I mean, she happens to be the professional, but if you have a tax professional, like once everything is explained to you and you work that into your budget, like it's not something that you worry about anymore.
Yeah.
It's daunting to set it all up, but then it's not a big deal. Like once the processes are in place.
And frankly, once you've done it once, really, we replicate that for all the businesses, right? So I have budgeting that, we'll do for our taxes. We have a carve out for that. We have a carve out for missed obligations. So even if I got the deposit and I have someone that didn't pay me the other 50% or whatever, I actually have a little slush fund over to the side to make sure I don't get caught off guard on that, right? So, it just comes with years of experience of running the business. So what it is, it's daunting to set it up. It's daunting to learn it first. But eventually, once you get there, it can kind of happen automatically, right?
Even, we use QuickBooks Online for our accounting, and I used to be a control freak with it, and I would do all these things manually, and now, no. QuickBooks files our payroll tax returns automatically, and they just draft the money from our operating account. I don't have to go make those payments. If you can automate something, have somebody, a professional, help you set it up and help you understand, and let it run itself.
Amen. And then you can actually start to be strategic about what you do. Now you get to analyze where the profit came from. Instead of worrying about, did I get this contractor paid or not, right? Now I get to step back and take a look and say, you know what? I got a lot coming from my industrial films. I got a lot coming from my commercials. I didn't get much coming from this. Maybe you want to strengthen that side, or maybe you want to ditch that side and focus on what was bringing you real revenue. That's when the business starts to become fun, when you can stop worrying about all the operational stuff. Right, my humble.
Also, if you fully expense your equipment that you purchase every year, it helps with writing off taxes and stuff like that. So buy lots of equipment. That's my.
Only if you can afford it. You can work it into the price of the project if there's something you want really bad. Yeah.
Just kidding. Okay. Last question we had was about ego in the workplace. You want to ask your question again?
I feel like when you get so far in any job and you do it, you get this kind of ego, and I feel like that's kind of the downfall of a lot of people, like good people I've seen, who are like, oh, they have so much potential, I see they get an ego, and then everything starts to fall apart because they start worrying about those processes, or they start doing tax fraud by accident. So it's like, how do you combat that? Especially in film.
I would also say, is it good to have ego when you're selling yourself?
Yeah. It's like a weird kind of like too much but not too little.
Well, there's ego and there's confidence. If you're confident about yourself and your product and the services you provide, I think it's good to walk through these doors and sort of have confidence in yourself. And I think it shows to the client that hey, this guy probably knows what he's talking about, he might know what he's doing. I mean, it's not ego, I mean, that, yeah, you find that. We can spend hours talking about that topic,
Yeah,
I'm sure.
Yeah, I found it was very difficult to sell something from a place of need. If I was needing that paycheck that day,
Yeah.
or that
Yeah.
month,
That's
like
right.
it was almost impossible to sell something. But if I didn't need it, and I was coming in there and I knew I could let the client walk away, then my close rate would go way up. And, you know, you can say like, okay, well, I'm losing the hunger or something, so I'm not fighting for it as much. But there's a certain calmness, and there's a certain gravitas, and a certain level of confidence that comes with being secure.
Yeah.
And when you're above that line, and you didn't lose, you know, thousands of dollars worth of revenue in 1 month, then you have that naturally. And so it's not so much egos as much as it is security in what you're doing. Like, you know you've done this 100 times for clients. You know what you're doing is going to work. You know when you're talking to a client that they can walk away and not give you the money, and you're still good for the next 3 or 4 months.
And this is where I think the business plan is very important. You've got to, when you're very calm, relaxed, and you're in a strategic mindset, you got to set what those price ranges are going to be. Because if you do things out of emotion, honestly, you're going to make bad decisions. And I've seen people make pricing decisions based off the fact that they just got bad news medically, or the wife just wrecked the car. Well, now they're disheveled for the day, so now they set a price that wasn't what it really should be. And here's the real problem: not that just you lost money on that, you've now set a precedent, right? And I think that this becomes the little emotional spiral that lots of people get into. That's very harmful, in my humble opinion. So I'm a big fan of, I got to set those ranges. And I've got to say that I'm willing to walk away from the business if it's under that range. I just got to decide that my strategic self last month said that was the low bar, so that's what the low bar is. How do I fight the ego? Well, I also said that this was the high bar, that I'd be thrilled to death to get paid this, right? And I will tell you, especially as a guy that, I sell every day and have for many years, and we do really big contracts, you have to remain humble. I'm a big fan of, I can sell humble all day long. And I can always eventually fight back and step up for what I need to. But when I step out and I'm egotistical, and it's hard for my family over there to hear this because they're like, "You're so arrogant. What are you talking about?" But I can always step up and defend myself, but I can't ever step back from that egotistical, or I shouldn't say ever. It's just really, really hard to do. Once you've burned that bridge, it's tough. So it's easy to take a breath, right? I tell you a quick funny story. I don't know that you guys are old enough to remember this. Do you remember when Obama was doing the congressional speech and he said something, and then the South Carolina congressman yelled, "You lie"? I got a couple of people that remember this. So I got to tell you a funny story. I'm on stage in New York. There's about, 80 people in this room that I'm presenting to. And once somebody asked me a question, I answered it very quickly. And I said, "You know what? Hold on a second. Let me think about it. Maybe I was too cavalier in that question." And this guy yelled, "You lie." Well, I hadn't put the facts together. So you want to talk about my head was about to explode. By divine intervention, I took a breath and I looked down, right? And I was literally getting ready to go with this mic going, "Are you an idiot? How dare," you know what I mean? I was ready to just shred this guy. And then in that nanosecond, I was able to put it together. So I said, "Hey man, that's not funny. You know I'm from South Carolina, right?" So the crowd erupts and it was just this great. And I was like, dude, had I not, again, divine intervention, but that moment of humility saved me from them having to carry me off stage, because that was going to be really, really bad. But it's a daily battle. I've got a lot of salespeople that are very, very egotistical. And to your point, what's hilarious is they'll get three months of good success, and all of a sudden they think they've got this solved. And they're one of their sales partners is a 20-year veteran that's over here going, "Kid, you got lucky. It's just not going to be this way." So surround yourself with good people and friends. And be that friend also that'll look at the other friend and go, "Hey man, great job. I'm proud of you. That was good. But you probably want to go find a mirror somewhere," right?
Well, talking about lowering the price just to make ends meet or fix a problem or anything, one of the things we learned, it's kind of like what you're saying. It's not okay to lower the price out of desperation. But we many times lowered our price because it's our decision. We're like, this is something that we believe in, this is a nonprofit we believe in, or this would just be a really cool opportunity. So we're gonna lower our price. The one thing I learned from the former owner of the business is when lowering the price, it's never a discount. You're not just gonna say, hey, we're gonna give you a discount. It's always, you're gonna pull something out. Maybe it's inconsequential to you and your budget, but always give the appearance to them that you're pulling something out, so you're not just saying, oh, we'll just knock off X percentage, for the heck of it, because then you're devaluing yourself.
That's right. And I'm sorry, and if you can't break it apart, or it's a nonprofit that you're willing to really help, right? Then you give them an invoice that has your original price,
right?
And then you give them your what's the word I'm looking for?
The charitable discount.
Here's my charitable donation of X amount, and you take that off the invoice.
Yes. It's just a reduction in revenue. It is not a tax deductible donation.
That's right.
Just a reduction in revenue. But one of my favorite days working with Jason was when I saw him kind of come into his own and realized that he was good at something. We had taken on a new client, and she gave us the most disrespectful feedback I've ever seen. And she was used to talking to people that way.
And she's known in Greenville.
And she's somebody in Greenville. And so we're like, she's a nightmare. And so he sat down and wrote a nice response and said, I'm at the stage in my career where I get to choose who I want to work with. And the people I want to work with are not just talented and skilled and knowledgeable in their job, but they are respectful communicators. And I don't really feel like that's what we have here. So I'm going to deliver this project for you, but this is going to be the last one we do. And sent that email.
And that was actually her words. I just typed it out.
Yeah.
My words were a lot more angry.
Yeah. Being able to fire a client will change your mindset. Yeah. Fire a client. If you don't feel good about your work, fire somebody. And it will, and that sounds terrible. They say that in service-oriented businesses, at the end of every year, fire your bottom 10%, your 10% least profitable clients. Because what that does, it allows you to spend your time on the things that you're good at, that are profitable, and where the relationships are respectful and positive. And that will give you a sense of self-worth, and also keep your head from getting too big, because you realize they could fire you too.
That's right.
All right, one more question. Anybody got one? No? Awesome. Thank you guys so much for speaking tonight. Well done. If you want some merch,